Game of Thrones had its fair share of epic battles. Tyrion's defence of King's Landing against Stannis, the Brothers of the Night's Watch holding back the wildlings at Castle Black, and Jon Snow versus Ramsay Bolton in the Battle of the Bastards, just to name a few. But now, House of the Dragon enters the ring with the Treasons of Tumbleton, the third season finale. The conflict between Daemon Targaryen and Ormond Hightower has been brewing since episode 3. And I don't think I'm alone in saying the build-up to the finale has been very hit or miss, but could the promise of dragons, death and destruction set everything right? Or would we see a repeat of the second season's finale, and was George R.R. Martin's warning about those toxic butterflies more than justified? As always, spoilers from the finale and fire and blood that could impact season 4. As expected, the season 3 finale is a long one, clocking in at 70 minutes. The battle is intense, has all those hero point of view moments you've become so accustomed to in Thrones. But away from Tumbleton, many important events take place. Nobody can say this was boring. Even if you don't love the direction of the show, I feel it was an entertaining hour and 10 minutes. Book fans will debate the decisions and big reveals for the next 2 years and beyond. As always, we'll split it into Team Green and Team Black to make it much easier to follow. And we begin with news that Aegon and Sunfire's resurrection has spread far and wide. Obviously, Rhaenyra doesn't take this too well. When we last saw her, she was getting it on with her mistress, but at her lowest, the person she turns to is her man, to her husband, to Daemon. And Miss Arya got the boot. Thank you for your services, both in and out of the bedroom. You are now surplus to requirements. Anyways, Rhaenyra is basically in full panic mode, feeling the people will now believe the gods have chosen Aegon, and her subjects will look to his return as king. However, Daemon remains calm, reassures his wife that she has all the power, she just needs to grasp it. This is nothing more than a test. And I always love whenever the Targaryen power couple deliver their lines in High Valyrian. It just makes the moment feel more intimate, and you just know the common tongue is forbidden in all their bedroom activities. To counteract Aegon's return, the Dragon Queen plans on forcing the High Septon to anoint her, which in her eyes will put to bed any doubt concerning her legitimacy. Maybe it's just me, but I found it a little jarring that Rhaenyra's patience completely vanished in this episode. It feels like we're missing a couple between her crying on Miss Arya's shoulder and unleashing her full Visenya Reborn gimmick. The first 2 episodes were glorified season 2 finales. Episode 3 was the real beginning of the new chapter. And during episodes 4 to 7, Rhaenyra's sympathy and restraint eroded over time. But it's like she woke up one day and chose violence. She's on the dark side now, and even does her best Emperor Palpatine impression when convincing Alan to kill the High Septon. I also feel Alan woke up one morning a different person, but we all know the reduced episode count has caused many plotlines and characters to suffer. There's no doubt about that. But no matter what, I'm glad we have finally reached a stage where Rhaenyra is no longer holding back and is much closer to the Queen, known as Maegor with teats. Emma Darcy is fantastic in this episode, best performance by a mile, and I'm very excited to see Emma really let loose and just fully embrace Rhaenyra's obsession with killing her enemies, maintaining her rule, and with the Song of Ice and Fire and the belief that she is the prince that is promised. And let's just hope, unlike with Cersei Lannister, there's going to be big consequences for killing the Pope. But Emma wasn't the only one who delivered some of their best work this week. Matt Smith is usually the MVP when he's given something fun to work with. Daemon was a blast this episode, whether that's when he's living his best life commanding his army or his duel with Roxton. Highlight for me was probably when he summons his boy Caraxes, who does his little strut before blasting down the gate. I'm kind of surprised people are shocked that Daemon fireballed those kids. At this stage, there are very few genuine good characters on the show. Maybe Daeron is the closest to being decent. But I feel HBO messed up early on when they tried to make the audience pick a side, pick green or black. We know what Daemon is, he lives for this, and I just can't forgive them for shutting him in that damn castle last season. The Winter Wolves, Roddy the Ruin in particular, get a lot of focus as they were tasked with scaling the walls and opening the gate before dying. Roddy the Ruin is bloody brilliant. He reminds me of a cross between Great John Umber and early Tormund before they made him into nothing more than a joke. He's a monster on the battlefield, has several memorable lines, some of them you'll see on a t-shirt in no time, and he gets plenty of good kills and gets a glorious death he desired. I do wish they explained a little better as to why the Winter Wolves are a bunch of greybeards. Basically, the North is about to be hit by a very tough winter, and instead of being a burden on their families, these old-timers would rather take a one-way trip down south and die in battle instead of home. I do hope their portrayal puts to bed the false narrative that all Northmen are honourable like Ned Stark. Screw those kids, eh? The Rivermen are kinda nothing in the fight, and I still think it's a crime Black Aly has been ignored so much. She has delivered, 3 or 4 lines? But she killed Criston Cole, and she's the future Lady of Winterfell, so they should be making a bigger deal of her. Plus, she's kinda hot. And I've always felt Hot D has wasted the majority of its side characters. Thrones had one of the best supporting casts of all time, with the Hound, Lady Olenna Tyrell, Oberyn Martell, Varys, Sam, Davos, and the list goes on and on. Hot D is basically the Rhaenyra, Daemon, and Alicent show right now, with others just behind them like Aegon and Aemond. And not having a strong roster is a problem. Maybe if they had more time and more concrete source material, it could have been different. And as I mentioned before, Mysaria got the boot. For the supposed spy master, she was terrible at her job. She hasn't got nothing on Varys. She done nothing when Ormond was causing chaos in the city. She spent all her time bickering with Daemon, and she's surprised that she got fired. We all know she was in it for herself and the small folk. Her snitching on Rhaenyra to Helaena and then sneaking off is just the beginning. I fully expect Mysaria to be the power behind the Shepherd uprising against Rhaenyra in the final season. And Baela was the first to endure Rhaenyra's wrath. It's clear she's done for stepmom now. Chances are Baela and Adam will abandon their queen when it gets real bad. Corlys will likely follow suit. In the end, Rhaenyra will lose most of her allies, and when the Daemon and Nettles Rhaena stuff happens, God knows how far the Dragon Queen will go. Now, Team Green. Remember last week? Harrenhal was the worst place to be, but it might just have redeemed itself. Maybe. Aemond recovers from his mother's poisoning. Mate, I would rather be poisoned than have to watch that scene again. At this stage, Aemond is defeated, he feels alone, and believes himself a cursed kinslayer. Hey, at least he got himself a 100-year-old cougar now. He's living the dream. And this is when we get the big Alice Rivers reveal. Fans have spent years debating on who Alice really is. But as far as the show is concerned, she was the wife of King Harren the Black, who built Harrenhal, the largest castle in Westeros, but was later burnt by Balerion the Black Dread after refusing to bend the knee to Aegon the Conqueror. Alice claims their son was caught up in the fire, but survived heavily burnt. After everything she tried to save him failed, so she turned to older cures, perhaps the Children of the Forest. And let's not forget the Isle of Faces is just next door. But because of all this, Alice was cursed to lose her name, her title, and to remain in the boundaries of the haunted castle forever. This happened over a century ago, and we don't know if this comes from George R.R. Martin, or if it's just a show-only point. Is Alice telling the truth? Is she lying? Why does she want to harness the very same power that took everything from her? Where was she during Game of Thrones when the Boltons and Tywin had this place? Will she show up in Aegon's Conquest movie? But someone who will star in that film will be Vhagar, and I expected Granny Godzilla to return this episode, but I guess we'll have to wait for season 4. Instead, a very pissed off and vengeful Aegon shows up on Sunfire. Aemond begs for forgiveness, seeing he was wrong. He regrets his decision at Rook's Rest. He won't fight back, but rather take whatever punishment his older brother has in store for him. But this is not what Aegon wanted. He wanted to make his brother suffer, and for Aemond to hate him for it. But Aegon wants the throne back. He knows he doesn't have much apart from a crippled dragon and a rumour of his return. So he recruits Aemond, commanding him to bring Vhagar back, and they will head to Tumbleton to put Daeron back in line, and later Rhaenyra's head on a spike. Obviously, they don't reach Tumbleton this season, but I don't expect any twists involving Aemond turning on Aegon again. But I can see how this all conflicts with Alice's plan to start a new line of Dragon Lords from Harrenhal. And with the Freys on their way to take the castle, chances are Aemond, when he's away with his brother, Alice could be put in danger. So maybe Aemond has to abandon his brother's cause and returns to Harrenhal to save his betrothed, setting up the final showdown with Daemon above the God's Eye. Part of me feels Aemond was wasted this season. You could argue everything at Harrenhal was being a big waste of time, but he's much more of a fleshed out character now. But let's just leave all the mummy issues alone. He's got his 100-year-old cougar now, let him be. As for Aegon, he might just be the best character this season. Hands up folks, who's watched the delivery of I'm Alive more than a dozen times? They for sure stepped up their game with the Greens. Ormond might have just had his best episode, shame it's his last, but at least he had a memorable death. Him puking when he find Ulf, or gagging at Roddy's arm got a laugh out of me. Boltcut Roxton was a beast. He usually just stands in the background, talks to Ormond, or teleports around the realm, but his duel with Daemon was fantastic, and to be fair, if it continued, Roxton probably would have won. Gawain being the most honourable man on the greens was great. His plan to treat with Daemon using Corlys and the promise of dividing the realm, having Daeron rule out of Old Town, was poorly thought out, but desperate men do desperate things. Daeron being knighted without earning the title Daeron during the Battle of the Honeywine was really stupid. I guess they tried to shoehorn it in this episode. He does attempt to take flight, but obviously he doesn't. Maybe he will next season. But not showing him being daring just ruins it for me. What's the point? It's a bit of a letdown, a bit of a cop-out if you ask me. But everything with Ulf was hilarious until it wasn't. Him enjoying his freedom and getting drunk before the battle was spot on. Don't drink and dragon ride, folks. It's bad. But Ormond finding him with his pants down asleep on the bog, brilliant. But Ormond made the same mistake Daemon did. Ulf turning on both the blacks and the greens was very well done. I loved how he got the kill on Ormond, and this should be a lesson for all. Never give the power of the gods to mere mortal men, especially with a chip on their shoulder and a drinking problem. And I'm very interested to see how Hugh reacts to everything. In the books, he also turns at the first Battle of Tumbleton, but I feel they're saving that for the final season. They wanted to keep everything on Ulf, but for Hugh, who will he blame for Kat's death? Will it be Daemon, or Rhaenyra, or the Greens? Will Ulf get it? Who will suffer the Bronze Fury's wrath? But perhaps the biggest moment in the episode falls on Helaena. Yeah, falls. Sorry guys. But the Green Queen is doomed to be Rhaenyra's prisoner forever, and her unborn child is in even worse danger. By the end of it all, she completes her knitted prophecy before jumping out the window. And this is when we got to talk about those butterflies. George R. R. Martin's now deleted infamous blog post from 2024 where he criticised the direction of the show. He basically washed his hands of it. And in particular, he criticised the exclusion of Helena's son Maelor during Blood and Cheese. And he even went as far as saying Helaena dies for no particular reason. Perhaps the final product was a reaction to that. Perhaps it was damage control. Perhaps George never read the final version. I don't think we'll ever hear more. I think George will never talk about this show again, as long as he's part with HBO. But to be honest, I've never been fond of the character of Helaena on the show. I felt she was more of a plot device rather than a fleshed out character. She just showed up, said weird stuff, said some Easter eggs and some prophecies for the fans. But since her mother left on her murder mission, Helaena has vastly improved. Seeing her suffer both mentally and physically was tough. And in the end, she could bear it no more, especially after Mysaria confirmed her worst fears. Seeing someone suffer from depression is always hard, especially having gone through it myself, but perhaps most striking of all was Rhaenyra's lack of interest in her sister's death. Baela was right, Rhaenyra only cares when you're useful to her. In the end, she was more bothered about Helena's final prophecy, Rhaenyra's doom, and I'm sure the Dragon Queen will spend her remaining time trying to prevent this at all costs. And how does Alicent factor into all this? She had a little cameo at the end where she saw a bunch of butterflies after Helena's death. I'm sure she's on her way back to King's Landing now, and she will be in for a shock when she's learned what's happened since she left. And I'm sure Alicent will be very much on board on bringing Rhaenyra down. But overall, one of the best episodes this season, along with 2 and 3, a vast improvement over the second season's finale. Tumbleton was well done. I don't think it touches Blackwater or Watchers on the Wall, but it had solid production, great drama and hero moments. Seeing an on-screen battle with a clear strategy and characters reacting to that is always appreciated, as a lot of battles for film and TV favour spectacle over logic. Rhaenyra's turn could have been played out a little longer, but I'm glad she's fully embraced the dark side now. And we all know they threw the books away a long time ago. Some of the changes have improved the story. Daemon being at Tumbleton never happened in the books, but look what we got here. No one's complaining about that. But other changes have been pretty bad. Not so much in this episode, but overall. But in the end, Hot D is a fantasy with dragons and magic, so I am willing not to let all the plot holes and my annoyances get the best of me. But guys, let me know your thoughts on the season 3 finale. Obviously, this is our last video this season, but we might do a full season review. And of course, there's going to be so many videos for season 4. It's going to be a long 2 years, but we'll get through it together. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you soon.